Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, Yeehaw, and this silly son of a gun's coming to Pokemon Unite. No, not this trainer wearing a yellow shirt, he's already there. I'm talking about Miraidon, and in this video, you're gonna get everything you need to know about Miraidon before it hits Eos Island on Pokemon Day, February 27th. I'm going to talk about tips, tricks, some little secrets, and how all of this Pokemon's moves and items work. I'll also tell you briefly about how to unlock this, however, it's not in the game yet. It will be very similar to something like Mewtwo's Crystal Cave or the Zacian's Weald or something like that. It's going to be a mode where you feed Miraidon sandwiches. Very Gen 9. Should be pretty fun, and honestly, it should probably take a while. I bet you're going to grind this Pokemon out for a couple weeks before you unlock it for free, but like all legendary Pokemon, it should be unlocked for free through playing. Miraidon is listed as an expert difficulty ranged special attacker with an EX license. What does the EX license mean? Well, right now what it means is this Pokemon may or may not be banned from ranked mode depending on what they want to do that particular season. The season I'm recording in right now, Mewtwo, and Zacian are all banned inside of ranked, but I don't know if that's going to carry over to every single season or not. They have not said whether that will or not. Also, as an EX Pokemon, it is consuming Eos energy for one of its abilities. It looks like that's going to be what Eos Pokemon do moving forward, now that the Mewtwo's do that, and Zacian has always done that. Let's talk about some of this Pokemon's kit. I do want to start by talking about this Pokemon's passive Hadron Engine, because this is a huge thing that this Pokemon can do, and it's going to be a little tricky. Like I said, it uses Eos energy. You can see that charged up bar underneath my Pokemon's health. That is your gauge to decide whether or not you can use your Hadron Engine, and once you have that charged, any move that you use, either your Thundershock, Thunder Wave, or any of the moves that you upgrade to, will trigger Hadron Engine, your passive, if you hit an enemy. If you hit a wild Pokemon, as you can see, it does not trigger anything. However, the substitute doll does count as a wild Pokemon, and you can see once it's used, this huge field of electricity is around me. It does a few things. First off, you may have noticed that it took away 20 Eos energy. The more Eos energy you have, the more can be taken away, up to 20 from what it looks like, and that will increase the size of this field. So what does this big old field do? So when you're inside of this electric terrain, you cannot be put to sleep, which is interesting. So sorry, Wigglytuff or Flail or Yawn Snorlax, you're not going to be able to put Pokemon to sleep inside of that field. You also, as Miraidon, do 30% extra damage, and your allies do 10% extra damage. Now, you may have noticed that it looked like it applied an effect to the enemy goal zone, and it does. It applies an effect to either the enemy goal zone or your own goal zone. If used near your own goal zone, you can see that slight effect on it. You will actually increase the amount of HP recovery. Now, if used on an opponent's goal zone, you will decrease the amount of HP recovery, both by 30%. So this could be huge if you're fighting your opponents on a goal and you want to try to pick up some KOs. It'll be harder for them to recover when they're inside of this field. Basically, when your field is just slightly touching that goal zone, it will count as disabling that goal zone. Again, they're still going to heal, but just not as much. Some interesting things about this is you don't actually get to direct where this goes. So wherever you are when you use your move, that is where your field will trigger. You can see it's barely touching my goal zone right here. So I do get the bonus effect, but it's on Miraidon. So it's not where you throw your move to, which might be a little bit better. It's where Miraidon hits the enemy. So it's a really cool ability, but it's a little tricky, at least it feels like in the public test server, a little tricky to sort of use it as best to your advantage. However, if you're coming out of the central area, you jump at some opponents on their goal zone, you're going to create the field around there. Could be great for your team. Before we get into your moves, your basic attack is as advertised. Basic. No boosted, no anything. You just have basic ranged attacks. They do special attack damage, and they're sad. They're just kind of sad. Your beginning moves are also pretty basic. You have Thundershock, which is just damage in a line. That's it. It does nothing else but deal some damage. And of course, like all of your moves, it can trigger your Hadron Engine passive. Your Thunder Wave is a little bit better. It's a sure hit that you're able to just cast out. So if you cast it like, you know, near the enemy and they're in the target range, it throws it right at them. Again, it can trigger your passive. And at the same time, it will paralyze your opponents. When your opponents are paralyzed, they take 30% reduction reduction in their move speed, and their attack speed is reduced by 10% for 2 seconds. So it's not a stun. It says it paralyzes them. That is what paralyzed is inside of Pokemon Unite. At level 5, you get your first huge choice. This is kind of the big choice depending on what sort of kit you want to play for Miraidon. There's Charge Beam that feels more like a long-range mage, and there's Electro Drift that will make you feel like more of a speedster. Let's talk about Charge Beam. With Charge Beam, you can quite literally charge it to get extra range, but charging it in this way gives you no extra damage. What you want to try to do with Charge Beam is hit your opponents with it twice. If you hit your opponents with it once, you increase your special attack. If you hit them again, you increase your special attack again, and then you get a fully charged use of Charge Beam. And this is really what Miraidon's about. You have the same thing with your other moveset. What's happening right now is a weird bug, but we're on the public test server. So again, charging it or not, you hit it once, hit it twice, and then you get the upgraded version, which is a long stream of crazy amounts of special attack damage. You're going to use this to just shred through your opponents. It's very, very strong, and it definitely fits in with kind of the design of making this a long-range special attacker. At the same time, if you happen to miss your charges, you're in a little bit of trouble, but it's going to do serious damage. It's going to help you rip down objectives. I think it's going to be a really powerful, long-range sort of spell type Pokemon, like a spellcaster. You have 2 stored uses of Charge Beam, so if you miss them, you kind of have to wait for them to come back here. There are ways to actually charge these back up. However, the Plus version will give you an extra charge of this. Right now, this is bugged on the public test server. It should be 3 charges of Charge Beam. So as you can see, if you miss one and hit the other, you still have to wait for that cooldown here. And we can talk more about how to refresh that a little bit faster, but you would be able to hit it if you're very, very quick. Your second option for a move is Electro Drift. Electro Drift is the more speedster option. You dash into your opponents, and just like Charge Beam, if you hit twice, you get the upgraded version of this that lets you let out this huge dash move that goes a very long range and sort of locks onto your opponents. It also has execute damage the lower their health is, so it's a pretty solid move. And again, this feels like the speedster combo for this Pokemon. Right now on the public test server, I would say Electro Drift feels more powerful, but it's all going to depend on how this Pokemon releases and sort of how it fits into the meta. I would expect that a lot of this is going to feel really powerful once it hits the game. Your Plus version is just going to decrease the amount of time it takes you to charge up stored uses of Electro Drift, and it's going to be one of the biggest parts of Miraidon's playstyle is exactly how you're able to store these and then use these. There is a move, Parabolic Charge, which is one of its second moves that I think is kind of busted inside the game right now. We'll talk about that in a minute because it's going to give you extra charges of your first move, whether it's Charge Beam or Electro Drift. I think something to notice with this is even though it's a sure hit and you can kind of lock on, you can get too far away and your opponents can sort of dash away from this move. So you need to keep a little pressure on when you're using this. Most of the time, however, they're not going to be able to get out of range of you using Electro Drift. But I have had opponents back all the way up and actually leave the area where they would take damage. You also are putting yourself into a dangerous position because you are going to end up dashing very, very far, and you could put yourself in a position where you're behind enemy lines and in a lot of trouble. You are not insanely squishy, but you're an attacker. So, you know, you're not jumping back there as Umbreon or something like that. Your second move option, we're going to start with Parabolic Charge. Currently, I would say Parabolic Charge is completely busted. What Parabolic Charge does is it lets out an area effect damage around you that will heal you. Also on the Plus version, give you a pretty massive shield and reset the charge of one of your charge moves, either Electro Drift or Charge Beam. So if you run out of charges, you can use your Parabolic Charge to get more of them, and it's honestly kind of busted. It's going to set up situations where you are able to get back your charges very fast on either Electro Drift or Charge Beam and just have some ridiculous combos because of it. As you can see, you're just charging up your moves so quick and you're able to use them again and again and again. I actually think if this is not nerfed, it's going to be the most broken thing about this Pokemon's kit. Just the ability to get these charges back so fast is really nuts. Parabolic Charge right now is without question the best thing about Miraidon because you need these charges to be able to do all the damage that you're looking to do. Again, the Plus version, as you can see right there, gives you a big time shield. This is not like, this is a huge shield. That is a massive shield for this Pokemon. So not only does it heal you, by the way, it heals you based on every single target hit. Not only does it gives you charges of your charging move, either Electro Drift or Charge Beam, but it also will give you this massive shield. I don't know. It's just honestly, it's the most broken thing about this Pokemon. Your next move option is Thunder, which is actually really cool. It's just not Parabolic Charge, but let's talk about it. You let down a cloud of thunder, or not a cloud. You kind of create an area here where lightning will strike all of these enemies inside of it. It's pretty cool. So unlike something like Pikachu's Unite move, it's going to hit everything in there, but very similar to Pikachu's Thunder, right? You're going to hit every enemy in there. However, different from Pikachu's Thunder, it's going to follow enemies actually. So it performs a lot like Fire Spin in the game. You're going to cast it and it's going to follow enemies around. It's going to hit them and it's going to slow them right here. So we'll see this happen to Venusaur. As you can see, my passive procced right there. I didn't really have a choice. It's just what happened. And Venusaur is going to be in a lot of trouble right there. Just the Thunder following them, continuous damage and continuous slows. The standard version is a 30% slow, and then the plus version is actually a 50% move speed slow. So it's pretty huge. It does decent damage and a decent slow. Again, not your other move, but absolutely a cool option right here. And if they do nerf Parabolic Charge, then I think this could be a really cool setup. Maybe for both kits, but definitely for a ranged mage playstyle. You know, you're already at range. Now you're slowing your opponents, putting them in bad situations when you riddle them with tons and tons of electric power. Something to notice right here, Thunder will trigger your passive, so you could throw it, actually be away from a situation, and you can see my passive was triggered because one of my moves was hitting an enemy, and that will trigger it. Your passive has a 20-second cooldown, so at times this could be, I don't know, just a little detrimental. It's going to take a ton of Eos energy away from you, and it's maybe going to put you in a position to, you know, use your passive when otherwise you would not have wanted to use it right here. Can we get Shiny Rayquaza? We get it! Woohoo! Let's talk about the Unite move because it's really cool. Miraidon's Unite move is awesome and it has an awesome name. Bright Future Meteor Storm. It sounds like what a fighting game character would yell out before they use their ability. Bright Future Meteor Storm! So what you do is you call down 5 meteorites on your opponents, you deal damage to them, and the damage increases each time it hits, the final one being a wider area, and it's going to knock your opponents up. So we can see the damage right here. What you do with this move is you hold it in the area. You can see the damage as 1100, 1200, 1300, 1500, and then finally, I didn't get to see that final one. It was like 2000 something, right? 1,000, 13, 14 something, 1476. So you do decent damage with it. Also, something to notice is, of course, if you are using this move while you are inside of your, you know, passive here, it's going to do more damage while you're casting it. All of your damage is increased when you're inside of your passive. So ideally, you would want to hit it inside of your passive right there. It did like 1,700 on the top end. So a lot of damage for this move, and it's not just in one spot. So you can drag this, move this around, throw these in different areas. Again, the more times you're hitting, the more damage this is doing. The last one always being that knockup. It's going to be fun using this in a lot of team fights where you see enemies like maybe you use this towards this Venusaur, but then you see some real low health ones, you know, running from the fight over here. You're going to be able to do some really cool stuff with it. I also just love that it's not Mewtwo levels of dumb where you don't even have to aim it or do anything with it for it to actually get value. I think it's pretty cool that this move appears to be a little different than that, so I have to, you know, respect it for that for sure. That being said, the damage on it feels a little light at times, and I hope they kind of keep it like this. It's a really cool Unite move, and you wouldn't want it to just one-shot everything on the map. As you can see, you can hit Electro Drift onto Rayquaza from some really interesting angles. You can pull it all the way out of the pit right here and jump in for the final hit. So there are going to be some interesting plays around the Ray pit with Electro Drift for sure. Now, you've got a few good secure moves from Miraidon, but I think Electro Drift will probably be your best option. The damage is big, and again, it has execute damage right here. So I think it's going to be ideal to find a good opportunity to move through your opponents and Rayquaza at the same time to get some crazy secures with this move. You can eject during Electro Drift, but you want to make sure you don't get too far away from your targets, because again, you can get to the point where you're casting Electro Drift and you're just like out of range of actually hitting them and doing damage, as you can see right there. So you don't really want to run too far when you're using this. Ideally, you want to be closer to your opponents than you do far away. But then again, if you're super close, you also have an opportunity of missing. So you kind of want to line it up at about mid-distance like that and hit as many enemies as you can with one Electro Drift. As for held items, I think you're going to be looking at something like this. Spoon choice wise. Of course, there could be other things that come up that we're not sure about with this Pokemon, but right now it feels like just giving yourself extra special attack damage that kind of pops with choice specs, as well as Spoon works really well. Oftentimes on attackers, the scaling is not good enough for you to have to stack a stacking item. I think it's possible you might try to stack special attack specs on Miraidon. There aren't a ton of great options outside of that. Maybe Energy Amp will be pretty cool for your Unite move, but I don't know. At its current rate, I don't think it's going to be enough. However, it could be kind of fun to try. Shell Bell wouldn't be the end of the world, obviously. This will give your Pokemon some more special attack, a little cooldown, a little HP recovery, but you probably won't need a Shell Bell here. I think it's going to be some basic special attack items. As far as boost emblems go, I think you're going to be looking at something like this here. 6 green, 7 black. This build has 2 white on it as well. You get a little extra move speed. You could play a build with a little extra HP also if you would like, or even more move speed, but you're probably going to be running 6 green, 7 black on Miraidon. So that's about everything you need to know before Miraidon hits the game. Of course, there's probably a bunch of stuff that we don't know yet and a lot of cool ways to play this Pokemon that we'll find out about. Keep watching my channel. I'll have a bunch of cool stuff about it. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you. I'll see you all next time. Nerf Miraidon. I bet we're gonna need to.